Hello there, this is R.A. Manard, Mitrava for Monks of the Way, doing the November 6th Truth Talk. And today the topic is basically the starts of practice and the Stone of Principles, kind of what that has to do with it, and people that are not even sure how to get started can get started. So we would want to look at the things that we want to watch out for, certainly, and one thing is, well, so where should I start? Well, one thing is feeling better than other people. That'll throw a hitch into it when we're getting started. If participating in things that you think are spiritual make you feel superior to other people, then you should really be taking a look at that. Well, why are you better than them? You know, kind of thing. Generally, things that will just bolster the ego like that. I'm lucky because hardly anybody watches my talks. I can't get a big head about it. There's the use of something you think is spirituality as a justification for not taking responsibility for something. You know, because this is spiritual, it's okay. It normally wouldn't be. No, it's still not okay. Whatever that thing might be, it's like making excuses saying it's my religion and not taking responsibility for something. It just doesn't really hold up. You can adopt new hobbies, and that's not a problem. Get interested in something, but getting into it and getting an obsession with it because it's popular or cool people are doing it or whatever, people that you respect, it doesn't mean you should just jump into it. Certainly not. And it's got to stand up on its own, and it's got to be something that, apart from that tribal connection with these other people that do something you do, you enjoy it. It's good for you. It's wise. It's productive. So on and so forth. Um, pardon me. Um, we get this thing also where we want to. A lot of this has to do with separating yourself instead of being together, making people come together instead of apart. Uh, always better that way. But being uninformed yet judgmental, when somebody's expressing anger or doing something that you don't appreciate, um, the judgment that's not supported is gonna be a bad thing for everybody. Better not to even go there. I mean, if somebody's doing something and you think it's not something you would do, and well, it doesn't make you better, it makes you different, it makes you in a different place. But you know, you can't get down the road without starting on the road. So you certainly are not better, just older, perhaps more experienced, maybe. There's this there's this thing also about positivity that I keep seeing, and it's like stay positive, and everything will be great. No. How about you be you? That sounds a little more reasonable to me. This positivity, this focus on positivity, um, can can easily make it so that you avoid looking at problems that you've got going on, or things that are going on around you. This positivity, it's a refusal to engage. You're going to have to engage in things that don't make you feel good, that are not the thing you want. You can't expect to get what you want all the time. And if you were always positive, then you're not engaged with reality. Certainly. I'm not saying that you should go the other way also, but certainly middle way, right? On that. You don't want to repress you don't want to repress any emotions that you don't think you should be feeling, even though you are. That wouldn't make sense, right? When you're starting out, that just will put you on the wrong footing. And you want to be able to be with yourself as well as other people. With yourself is kind of the first thing. So meditation is certainly a must. To sit there with yourself and not necessarily silence, but even watching your thoughts too in meditation. Different types of meditation. Those are certainly different types. But you want to cultivate, you know, a love for yourself. Otherwise, you can't properly love others, certainly. And you also don't want to go overboard. Some of these positive people or people that are looking to be, I don't know, a martyr or something, get themselves into situations where they tell themselves they were just being nice and doing the right thing, but then they got themselves, you know, in a dark alley delivering a package for somebody they don't know, and they don't know what's in it and don't know where it's going to, in some strange place they've never been. I hope that's descriptive enough to let you know it's a bad situation. And that happens to people too, and they can try to feed off this martyr business, you know. Well, they must be so holy because they're suffering, and then they want to suffer more and more because the more they suffer, the more they think they're succeeding somehow, which is pretty ridiculous. Wanting to suffer. There's these practices people get into, and these lines of thought, and religions, ways of thinking, whatnot, and they turn away from, you know, fact-based discernment. Like you shouldn't use fact-based discernment or something, which would be ridiculous because nobody would live for a day if they didn't use fact-based discernment. And just because it fails you at a point doesn't mean that it's not useful beyond that point. It means that that's your current limit. I mean, all of us should know this. I think at least all of us that were in school as children should know this, that as we went along, we were able to understand more, and things that were complete mysteries became very well known, very factually based. Very factually based in these facts that we can all test and get the same results, and the universe is full of that. It doesn't stop because you stop understanding. Certainly. That would be quite a silly universe. And we don't want to miss out on things either. I mentioned hobbies and stuff like that. We don't want to, you know, throw out everything good because we want to throw out a few things. Because we look and we see that maybe this or that isn't exactly what we want it to be. But you know, people build these dogmas about this is a good thing to do, that's a bad thing to do. This is a good thing to do, that's a bad thing to do. And you are not a tied up dogma. You're an individual, and you are not going to be bound by the good and bad ideas of someone else. It's all debatable. There's no set dogma in Buddha's teaching, and I know that seems backwards, but it's a dogma of no dogma. At any time, Somebody could have walked up to Buddha and said, you know what, this teaching you have about this, it's wrong, and let me tell you why. And he would have debated the guy. And guess what? If he couldn't debate that it was true, then he wasn't going to hold that it was true anymore. I think they miss the fact when people talk about Buddha that he was walking around trying to figure out everybody's beliefs, trying to figure out what they believed and why they believed it, and he was there and he was going to debate it and see if it was true, see if there was a basis for more inquiry, more investigation, more experimentation. He was an open-minded guy. He was not down to a dogma, and we have so many of these people that are open to a dogma, claiming that they're, of that teaching, and they're certainly not if that's the way they are. Pardon me. So we don't want to miss out on having things work out in certain ways. You would like to be a great ping pong player. You want to be good at riflery or running or whatever this may be. These are not things that you need to throw out of your life because you want to be spiritual or you want to live the holy life even. And this moderation, this middle way comes back again in my mind when I'm talking about that, thinking you don't want extremes. One person has no use for idle chit-chat. How's the weather? How's your sister? And not really talking about anything of substance. Another person, that's a part of what they're doing. They're getting to know people, and that's their way in. And they're trying to engage in this because there's a purpose. Or it's teaching them something as they do it about people, about expressions, about reading people, about anything really. I mean, and I'm not saying you should be insincere to people, certainly, but I'm saying a thing can have more than one purpose. And certainly some things really don't have a redeeming purpose, and we can understand that. Well, I think maybe maybe we should talk about the stone of principles, maybe, because you want to have a foundation for beginning to do stuff, right? And so it's very simple things at first, you try to respect and value others the same as yourself more and more. And these are things that a monk would already be trying to do and have some real success at. But a person can just start off and look at these 8 things and go, you know what, I can move towards that. I can move towards that. This thing that I'm doing, it makes sense. That's not quite productive. It's not quite right. Not really wise. I probably shouldn't be doing that. You know what? I could do this other thing. I'll like it better. It'll be wise. It'll be productive. Bam, you're on your way. You're making these changes, and some of them can be very small. How much time you spend doing something a day on the average versus how wise, productive it might be for you. Keep in mind, pardon me, keep in mind that some things take a really, really long time. They could take your lifetime to really work. We'll get through this. Respect and value others the same as yourself. That's big. That's huge. That's freaking huge. To walk down the street, a person comes up to you and they got a problem, and you really value them the same as yourself, and you really want to work it out for them. It's like a long lost best friend you thought you'd never see again, or a mother's only child. You want to deal with it. You want to help. There's just no end to how much you want to help. There certainly is an end to how much you will help and what is wise to do for people, but we can talk about that another time. You want to discern truth from delusion. And I know that's huge, and it sounds kind of vague, but the teachings give you tools to do this, discerning truth from delusion. In the Delusion Sutta, we see a lot of that about, the things that we do that are not right. They're pointing us in a bad direction and doing bad things for us, and the things that are good, they're pointing us in a good direction, doing good things for us. They make us more concerned and connected to people, and instead of the opposite, more compassion, more kindness. Number 4, as it happens, is learning compassion and kindness. You want to learn it as a learned thing. However, that's going to take some time. I don't think anybody ever started off understanding what's really compassionate and kind with themselves, let alone other people. Right off the bat takes a very long time. Certainly, I think lifetimes. After food, lodging, medical, and related expenses are maintained, use of at least half of the finances that you don't really have a spot for towards doing something of a service to other people, for other people. That's a thing, and some people don't have any actual money, and along with that, certainly there's other things. What can you do, for people, for others, for society, for the greater good, so on and so forth. Also, you would want to try to protect anybody in need, and and that sounds big. How many people are there in need that need protection, do you think, in the world? But we're talking middle way here, so a person might seem to be in need of protection and certainly not be, and a person that doesn't seem to be might really need it. And all things have to go with what's wise and what's productive and good for everybody. And so it's a journey figuring out what's what there as well. We want to use the middle way in all things, understand that middle way is there, that there are extremes that we could go to that way go beyond being wise, productive, and good for everybody. And things that are true will always be that way. And there's very little cause for going the other direction with any of those things. Number 8 on the stone of principles is actually remembering, after you pass away and the other land is reached, to go looking for the one known as Buddha, seeing what you can do to help out. And so, as a lay follower, that certainly wouldn't have to be something you would accept. And it's certainly not something anybody should plan for. It's just a thing that you are or are not in agreement that that's what you should do in that case. But you know what? Nothing in life changes because of that. Life is life, and now is now, and you're living now. So you can't be invested in dwelling on the future in lieu of being in the now and be invested in now. Not saying that you can't make plans for the future. Everything should go into the future, but the investment, if there's too much investment, then it ruins everything. And I have other talks about that. And then, of course, being too invested in the past, certainly. Not saying that we shouldn't remember the past ever, and not saying that we shouldn't learn from it, because you certainly do well to do that. Pardon me. So we're at about 22 minutes, and I don't want to run too long. I did want to cover the topic, but I didn't want to overly put too much out there. This is really just the version 1 of this talk, and I think I will go ahead and add some more to this later in version 2. But for now, I think that's just a basic covering. There's a lot of other things to keep in mind. Certainly, maybe I could make a part 2, because there's basic things you should start looking at. The precepts, because the precepts are like a smaller version of the Stone of Principles, if you look at it that way. So, lying, cheating, stealing, immoral behaviors, druggy behaviors, so many behaviors that could be addressed, have not really been addressed in this particular talk, but I certainly will address them. So in version 2, or I'll make a part 2 of this. I want to thank you there for attending. Mr. Darlentine, it looks like. And if there's any questions, you could go ahead and ask. I'll give you a minute to ask any questions you might like to ask. Pardon. Like I was saying, when a person gets started with their life practice, an intentional life practice, you don't just jump in with both feet and try to swim. You should be making incremental changes. You should be measured. You should be under control, making wise decisions, productive, good for everybody. It looks like there's no question at this time, so I'll go ahead and cut it short. Now, I want for each and every one of you for light to remove darkness, and I want for truth to remove delusion in your life. This is Ari Manard for Monks of the Way. Thanks for having a listen.